Nia Thompson was only 19, black, homeless, and so utterly invisible in the rushing heartbeat of the city that most people walked straight through the space she occupied without ever registering her presence. She owned nothing that could be called hers. No roof that belonged to her name. No promise of a meal waiting at the end of the day. No voice on the other end of a phone that would ask if she was safe when darkness fell. That particular morning she woke the same way she had woken for more months than she cared to count. Curled tightly on a single sheet of flattened, damp cardboard tucked behind the rusted back wall of an abandoned laundromat on 14th Street. The concrete beneath her had stolen every bit of warmth from her body during the night, leaving her joints stiff and her bones aching in that deep, familiar way that cold and hunger teach you to accept as normal. Her stomach was a tight, angry knot. She had managed half a bruised apple the previous afternoon, handed to her by an older vendor who had looked at her with pity rather than kindness, and that small kindness had been gone within minutes. She pushed herself upright slowly, joints popping, and rubbed the sleep from her eyes with the heels of her palms. The sky above the alley was still the bruised purple of early dawn. Nia whispered her morning ritual to herself, the same 5 words she had said every sunrise since she was 16. Today something changes. She didn't know what shape the change would take. She had long stopped believing in miracles. She only knew she could not keep drifting through another day exactly like the last one. She folded the cardboard with careful, almost tender movements, as though it were a blanket someone had lent her, and wedged it behind the dumpster so no one would steal it before night to the public fountain on Carver Avenue. The water came out icy and metallic, but she cupped her hands under the stream and washed her face anyway, scrubbing at the city grime that seemed to settle into her skin, no matter how hard she tried to stay clean. She ran her fingers through her thick, natural curls, coaxing them into some kind of order, and tied them back with the only thing she still carried from her old life. A faded red scarf that had once belonged to her grandmother. The scarf was threadbare now, the color almost gone, but it still smelled faintly of the lavender soap her grandmother used to buy in little packets from the corner store. Nia smoothed the oversized hoodie she wore, 2 sizes too big, picked up from a church donation bin 6 months earlier, and tugged at the hem of her jeans where the knees had worn through to white threads. Her sneakers were cracked across the soles, the laces frayed to almost nothing, but she tied them as tightly as she could and stood a little straighter. The world might treat her like she was nothing, but she refused to carry herself that way. Today would be about work. Not begging, never begging. Work meant dignity. Work meant proving to herself that she was still someone who could stand on her own feet. That was the one thing her grandmother had repeated until the day she passed. They can take your money, your house, your name, but they can't take your work ethic unless you hand it to them. Nia had taken those words and wrapped them around her heart like armor. She walked block after block that morning, stopping at every diner, every corner store, every auto repair shop with an open door. "Ma'am, do you need someone to sweep up or wash dishes? I'm strong. I'm quick. I don't complain. Sir, I can carry boxes, stock shelves, clean windows, anything you need done right." Most people never even lifted their eyes from their phones before she finished the first sentence. A few looked her over. The worn sneakers, the too big hoodie, the tired eyes, and muttered, "No, we're full up," or "Sorry, kid, not hiring right now." One man behind the counter of a small bodega actually laughed out loud. "Girl, you look like you need a job more than I need the help." The words stung like a slap, but Nia swallowed the hurt, thanked him anyway, and kept moving. She had learned early that letting the pain show only made people more uncomfortable, and when people got uncomfortable, they turned away faster. By late morning, the sun had climbed high and turned vicious. Sweat rolled down the back of her neck and soaked into the collar of her hoodie. Her stomach growled so loudly that a middle-aged woman walking past paused, gave her a long, pitying look, and pressed a crumpled dollar bill into her palm. Nia thanked her softly, "Thank you, ma'am," but slipped the bill into her sock instead of spending it. $1 wouldn't buy a meal. It wouldn't buy safety. It wouldn't buy a future. She needed more than pity. She needed a door to open, even just a crack. She found herself on the wide boulevard lined with palm trees and luxury sedans, the place where the city showed off its wealth. Across the street stood the towering glass monolith of Harrington Global, one of the largest tech finance conglomerates on the continent. The building reflected the sky like a mirror, cold and perfect and completely unreachable. Nia stood on the opposite curb, watching wave after wave of sharply dressed people disappear through the revolving doors. She felt like a speck of dust against all that glass and steel. That was the moment she saw it happen. A black Mercedes S-Class glided to the curb with the kind of quiet authority only very expensive cars possess. The rear door opened and a tall white man stepped out, already mid-sentence on his phone,
fix it before
voice
the
low
board call.
and sharp-edged. No excuses, no delays. He looked to be in his mid-30s, blonde hair neatly combed, charcoal suit tailored so perfectly it seemed to move with him like a second skin. Cufflinks caught the sunlight. His posture said control. His tone said he was used to being obeyed instantly. Ethan Harrington. Nia had seen the name on billboards, on news tickers, on the sides of buildings he owned. Billionaire. Investor. The man who quietly controlled more of the city's future than most politicians ever would. He strode toward the entrance without a single glance backward. The Mercedes pulled away smoothly. Something small dropped from his pocket and landed on the pavement with a muted slap. A wallet. Thick, black leather. Expensive even at a distance. Nia's pulse jumped into her throat. She scanned left and right. People streamed past, heads down, earbuds in, eyes on screens. No one stopped. No one looked down. She crossed the street slowly, every step feeling louder than it should. She bent as if adjusting her shoe and picked it up. The leather was buttersoft under her fingertips, embossed with faint gold lettering. She glanced around one more time, then opened it just enough to peek inside. Her breath caught and refused to come back out. Cash. Thick, neat stacks of $100 bills, rubber-banded in bundles. Black and platinum credit cards with no visible limit. A few loyalty cards from private clubs and restaurants she had only ever seen on television. And the driver's license. Ethan Harrington, CEO, Harrington Global. Her fingers shook so violently the cards rattled against each other. This was not just money. This was escape velocity. A deposit on an apartment. Groceries for months. New shoes that didn't leak when it rained. A bus ticket out of the city if she ever decided she couldn't take another night on concrete. No one had seen her bend down. There were no obvious cameras pointing into her hoodie pocket, melt into the crowd, and disappear. No one would ever know. 3 teenage boys leaning against a nearby streetlight noticed her standing frozen with the wallet in her hands. One of them grinned wide. Yo sis, that's a whole jackpot right there. Run with it. Ain't nobody chasing you for that. Another laughed low. That's your ticket out the streets. Don't be stupid now. Nia closed the wallet with a soft snap. Her stomach twisted violently, hunger and temptation fighting inside her like two animals. She could see it all so clearly. A hot shower, clean clothes, a bed with real sheets, a full night of sleep without one eye open for danger. And then another image pushed through. Her grandmother's face in the dim light of their old apartment kitchen, voice steady and sure. Money comes and money goes, baby girl. But your name? Your character? That's the only thing nobody can take unless you hand it over yourself. If we lose our honesty, we've lost the war. Tears burned the backs of Nia's eyes. She was starving. She was exhausted. She was terrified. But she was not a thief. Before the part of her brain that wanted to survive could argue any longer, she turned and started walking straight toward the towering glass entrance of Harrington Global. Each step felt heavier than the last. The building grew taller and colder the closer she got. Security guards in crisp black uniforms stood like sentinels at the gate. Men and women in tailored suits moved past her as though she were made of air. Nia's heart slammed against her ribs so hard she thought it might bruise. She clutched the wallet like a shield. When she reached the entrance, one of the guards immediately stepped into her path, palm up. Where do you think you're going? His tone was flat, professional, already dismissive. His eyes flicked over her. Sneakers with split soles, jeans thin at the knees, hoodie 2 sizes too big. I need to return something at the edges, Nia said. Her voice came out quieter than she intended, but she forced it steady. What do you have there? He leaned forward slightly. She opened the wallet just far enough for him to see the driver's license. The guard's expression changed instantly. Eyes widening, posture shifting from boredom to alert. Before she could explain anything else, his hand closed around her wrist like a vice. "Thief!" he shouted. Another guard materialized from the side entrance within seconds. Heads turned. Phones lifted. Whispers spread like fire through dry grass. "I'm not a thief," Nia cried, voice cracking with panic. "I found it on the street after his car left." But the words were swallowed by the commotion. They pulled her through a side door, her sneakers squeaking helplessly against polished marble. Tears burned hot tracks down her cheeks, but she bit the inside of her lip and refused to sob out loud. Not in front of them. Not yet. Upstairs, on the 68th floor, Ethan Harrington stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his private office, hands clasped behind his back, staring out over the city he had spent 15 years learning to dominate. The skyline glittered like broken glass under the midday sun. He had no idea that right now, 67 floors below him, a young black woman who had chosen conscience over survival was being dragged into his building, and that her decision was about to become the pivot point around which his entire carefully controlled world would begin to turn. Down in the security office, the fluorescent lights hummed like angry insects. Nia sat on a cold metal chair bolted to the floor, wrists still throbbing where the first guard had gripped her. Her pulse was so loud in her ears that it drowned out most of the room noise. The door swung open with a heavy click. Ethan Harrington stepped inside, tall, composed, blue eyes scanning the scene with clinical from earlier, precision. Not a crease out of place. He made a single, small gesture with his hand. The two guards left without a word. The door closed again. Now it was only the billionaire and the girl from the street. "So," he said, voice low and measured, "you thought you could steal from me?" "I didn't steal it," Nia answered. She lifted her chin even though her whole body was shaking. "I found it on the road right after your car pulled away." He extended his hand. She placed the wallet carefully in his palm, as though it might explode. Silence stretched between them like taut wire. Ethan opened the wallet slowly. He counted the cash, still there, every bill. He flipped through the cards, none missing. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly when he found the small folded note tucked into a hidden pocket. He read it without changing expression, then closed the wallet with a soft snap. "How much did you take?" he asked. "Nothing." He stepped one pace closer. There was a note inside. Private. What did it say? Nia met his eyes. It said, "Don't trust the board meeting tomorrow." The air in the room seemed to thicken. Ethan stared at her for a long, unblinking moment. Then he turned to the door and spoke to the guards waiting outside. "Leave us." They disappeared. The door clicked shut again. He studied her face, really studied it for the first time. "Why didn't you keep it?" "Because it isn't mine." "You're homeless." She nodded once. "You're hungry." Another nod. "And you still brought it back here?" "My grandmother used to say, if we lose our honesty, we've lost the only thing that's truly ours. I've lost almost everything else. I wasn't going to hand that over too." For the first time, something shifted in Ethan's expression. Not warmth exactly, but a crack in the armor. He reached into the wallet, pulled out a thick stack of hundreds, and held it toward her. Her stomach clenched so hard she almost doubled over. That stack could mean a room for 6 months, meals that weren't scavenged, shoes without holes, a chance to breathe. But she slowly shook her head. "I don't want it." His eyebrows lifted slightly, the first real surprise he had shown. "You don't want money?" "I want work. Any kind. Cleaning, carrying boxes, filing papers, running errands. I'm not afraid of hard. I just need someone to give me a real chance." Ethan looked at her for a long time. Most people who came into his orbit begged for cash, favors, introductions. This girl was asking for the opportunity to prove herself. After what felt like an eternity, he gave a single nod. "Come back tomorrow. 8 a.m. maintenance department. This is not charity. You work. You perform. One serious mistake and you're out." "Understood." Tears welled up again, this time not from fear, but from something dangerously close to hope. Yes, sir. Thank you. He pressed a button on his desk. The door opened. His executive assistant entered. A tall white woman in a tailored blazer, eyes sharp and mouth already set in a thin line. Register her, Ethan said. Temporary staff. Maintenance. The assistant blinked. Sir, is there a problem? No, sir. But the look she gave Nia could have frozen water. As Nia followed the assistant out of the office and down the long hallway, she heard the first whispers drifting from open doorways. Who is that? Some street girl? Did you see her shoes? Why would Mr. Harrington even talk to her? Nia kept her eyes forward and her shoulders back. She had a job. For the first time in years, she had somewhere to be tomorrow morning. Her stomach clenched so hard she almost doubled over. That stack could mean a room for 6 months. Meals that weren't scavenged, shoes without holes, a chance to breathe. But she slowly shook her head. I don't want it. His eyebrows lifted slightly, the first real surprise he had shown. You don't want money? I want work. Any kind. Cleaning, carrying boxes, filing papers, running errands. I'm not afraid of hard. I just need someone to give me a real chance. Ethan looked at her for a long time. Most people who came into his orbit begged for cash, favors, introductions. This girl was asking for the opportunity to prove herself. After what felt like an eternity, he gave a single nod. Come back tomorrow. 8 a.m. Maintenance Department. This is not charity. You work. You perform. One serious mistake and you're out. Understood. Tears welled up again. This time not from fear, but from something dangerously close to hope. Yes, sir. Thank you. He pressed a button on his desk. The door opened. His executive assistant entered. A tall white woman in a tailored blazer, eyes sharp and mouth already set in a thin line. Register her, Ethan said. Temporary staff. Maintenance. The assistant blinked. Sir, is there a problem? No, sir. But the look she gave Nia could have frozen water. As Nia followed the assistant out of the office and down the long hallway, she heard the first whispers drifting from open doorways. Who is that? Some street girl? Did you see her shoes? Why would Mr. Harrington even talk to her? Nia kept her eyes forward and her shoulders back. She had a job. For the first time in years, she had somewhere to be tomorrow morning. Ethan Harrington stood alone at his window once more. He opened the wallet again and stared at the small folded note. Don't trust the board meeting tomorrow. His jaw tightened. Someone inside his own company was moving against him. And the girl who had just walked out of his office, the one who could have disappeared with half a year's rent in her pocket, had unknowingly stepped straight into the center of the coming storm. Nia barely slept that night. Excitement and fear chased each other through her mind in endless circles. She kept replaying his words. 8 a.m. Maintenance Department. One mistake and you're gone. She couldn't afford to fail. Before the sky even began to lighten, she was up, washing at the fountain again, scrubbing every inch of skin she could reach. She borrowed a plain white blouse from Mama Bessie, the elderly fruit vendor who had taken a liking to her weeks earlier. Mama Bessie pressed the blouse into her hands and said softly, "Hold your head up tomorrow, child. You earned this." Nia scrubbed her jeans until the knees looked almost presentable, cleaned her sneakers as best she could with a rag and water, and tied the red scarf neatly around her curls. When she reached Harrington Global at 7:55 a.m., the building looked even more intimidating in daylight, glass reflecting the sun like a wall of fire. The assistant was already waiting at reception, arms crossed. "You're late." The clock says 7:55. Corridors that smelled of fresh coffee and expensive cologne until they reached the back wing. The air changed, less perfume, more bleach and industrial cleaner. The maintenance supervisor barely glanced at her. "Third floor. Start with the conference rooms. Don't touch anything that isn't on the list." He thrust a mop and bucket at her without another word. Nia worked steadily all morning. She wiped down long mahogany tables until they gleamed, straightened heavy leather chairs, emptied trash cans, vacuumed carpet that cost more per square foot than she had seen in a year. Her back began to ache by the 10th room. Her hands stung from the cleaning chemicals. But she didn't complain. She didn't slow down. When she finished the third-floor conference wing, she moved to private offices on 4. That was when she saw the door slightly ajar. Inside, the room was empty. A file lay open on the desk. She had no intention of looking. Her job was to clean, not pry. But the bold header caught her eye as she passed. Emergency board meeting, financial irregularities, and suspected internal breach. Her heart lurched. She remembered the note in the wallet. Don't trust the board meeting tomorrow. She took one step closer, just to read the title again, just to be sure she hadn't imagined it. The document mentioned millions missing, suspicious transfers, someone inside the company feeding information to competitors. Footsteps behind her. What are you doing in here? Nia spun. A tall man in a gray suit stood in the doorway. Mid-40s, thin lips, eyes like chipped ice. I was cleaning, she stammered. Cleaning or spying? He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. You weren't supposed to see that. I didn't touch anything. The door was open. Security, he barked. 2 guards appeared almost instantly. They grabbed her arms. She was going through confidential files, the man in gray said. That's not probably true. Planted here. Nia cried as they pulled her away. The file was already open. They marched her downstairs to the supervisor's office. Her knees shook. Was this how it ended? Back on the street before she even finished her first full day? Moments later, the door opened again. Ethan Harrington walked in, expression calm but eyes sharp. He looked from the guards to Nia to the man in gray. What happened? He asked quietly. She was snooping in restricted material, the man in gray answered. This is a serious breach. Ethan turned to Nia. Did you open the file? No, sir. It was already open on the desk. I was dusting the shelves. I only saw the title. Something about financial irregularities and an internal breach. Ethan's gaze moved to the man in gray. And why exactly was a confidential board document left open and unattended in an unlocked office? The man opened his mouth, closed it. Silence pressed down on the room. Ethan spoke without raising his voice. Nia, go back to your work. Her eyes widened. Sir, you heard me. She nodded quickly and hurried out before anyone could change their mind. But as she passed the man in gray, he leaned close enough that only she could hear. You're going to be a problem girl. Problems get solved. Nia felt ice slide down her spine, but she kept walking. She picked up her mop again and finished the 4th floor in silence. Every sound made her flinch. The ding of the elevator, footsteps in the hall, the click of a door closing. She felt watched. She was watched. That evening she left the building later than usual. The sky had already turned deep indigo. Streetlights flickered on one by one. She walked back toward the laundromat alley, legs heavy, mind spinning. When she rounded the corner to her spot, gone. The small plastic bag that held her spare shirt and toothbrush was gone. The thin blanket she wrapped around herself every night was gone. In their place lay a small pile of charred fabric and ash. Someone had found her sleeping place. Someone had burned everything she owned. Nia's knees buckled. She sank to the ground slowly, hands shaking as she touched the blackened edges of what used to be her blanket. Tears came hot and fast. No, she whispered. No, no, no. This wasn't random. This was a message. Leave, disappear, or next time it won't be your blanket. Footsteps behind her. She wiped her face quickly and turned. Mama Bessie, the elderly fruit vendor who had lent her the blouse, stood there, eyes wide with horror. My child. What happened here? Nia couldn't speak at first. Mama Bessie looked at the ashes, then at Nia's face, and shook her head slowly. Some people cannot stand to see a good heart rising. They get afraid of the light. Nia hugged her knees. I only wanted to work. Why does trouble keep chasing me? Mama Bessie knelt beside her with difficulty and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Because light attracts darkness, baby. But darkness don't win unless you let it. She paused. Across the street, black car. Tinted windows. Slowed down just now. Someone watching. Nia looked up. The car was already gone, but she felt the office inside Harrington Global. The man in the gray suit sat at his desk staring at a photo on his phone. A grainy shot of Nia walking away from the building that evening. He smirked. She'll quit soon. They always do. But he didn't know Nia Thompson. She wiped her tears with the sleeve of her hoodie, stood up slowly, and looked at Mama Bessie. I'm not running. Mama Bessie smiled. A small, proud smile. That's my girl. The next morning Nia returned to Harrington Global at 7:50. She wore the same clothes. There was nothing else. But her back was straighter, her eyes clearer. The whispers followed her again. Louder now. She slept outside last night. Probably burned her own stuff for attention. Pathetic. She ignored every word and went straight to the maintenance closet. She worked twice as hard that day. Scrubbed baseboards until they shone. Polished doorknobs until her reflection looked back at her. Carried stacks of printer paper up 3 flights of stairs without once asking for help. By late afternoon, her arms trembled from exhaustion. But she didn't stop. Ethan called her to his office at 5:15. The assistant looked furious at having to escort her upstairs again. When the door closed behind them, Ethan was standing by the window as usual. You saw something yesterday, he said without turning around. Yes, sir. Tell me exactly what you saw. Nia took a breath. A file on a desk in an empty office. It was already open. I only read the header, Emergency Board Meeting, Financial Irregularities, and Suspected Internal Breach. I didn't touch anything. Did anyone instruct you to look at it? No, sir. He turned then. This company is not what it appears from the outside. There are people here who smile at me in meetings and then work against me in the shadows. And because you're new, because you have no connections, you are the easiest person to blame if things continue to go missing. Nia felt her stomach drop. A target. Yes. If more money disappears, they will point at you. You're poor. You're the outsider. The story writes itself. She swallowed hard. What should I do? Stay invisible. Do your job perfectly. Speak to no one about what you saw. Trust no one. He paused. And Nia? Yes, sir. Be careful. Those 2 words followed her all the way back downstairs. That evening she left the building after dark again. The city felt colder, the shadows deeper. When she reached the laundromat alley, she braced herself for more destruction. But the spot was untouched. She exhaled in shaky relief, then noticed a small envelope tucked under a loose brick. Her hands shook as she opened it. A single line typed on plain paper, Leave the company. Next time we won't burn clothes. We'll burn something else. Nia's blood turned to ice. She looked around wildly. No one. Just the hum of distant traffic and the flicker of a broken streetlight. She crumpled the note and shoved it deep into her pocket. She would not cry again tonight. She would not run. The following days blurred into a tense routine. Nia arrived early, worked late, spoke to almost no one. The whispers never stopped. Someone hid her mop bucket on the 7th floor. Someone accidentally spilled coffee on a stack of files she had just organized. Small things, but each one felt like a push toward the edge. She kept going. One afternoon, Ethan summoned her again. This time he didn't stand at the window. He sat behind his desk, looking tired in a way she hadn't seen before. I need you to help me with something personal. He led her to a private suite on the top floor, a space that felt more like a home than an office. In a sunlit room overlooking the city sat an elderly woman in a wheelchair. Her hair was silver, her eyes bright despite the frailty of her body. This is my mother, Ethan said quietly. The woman turned slowly. So this is the honest girl. Nia felt suddenly shy. Yes, ma'am. Come closer, child. Nia stepped forward. The woman took both of Nia's hands in hers. They were cool and thin but strong. My son doesn't trust people easily. He's been burned too many times. If he's protecting you, then you've already shown him something most people never do. Nia glanced at Ethan. He stood by the door, arms folded, face unreadable, but his eyes were softer than she had ever seen them. Later that evening, while Nia was wiping down a conference table on the executive floor, 2 staff members walked past. Voices low but not low enough. She thinks she's important now that he's given her an apartment. Let's see how important she feels tomorrow morning. Nia pretended not to hear, but she didn't see the small envelope one of them slipped into her cleaning cart when her back was turned. The next morning security arrived before she even finished her first room. Nia, come with us. Now. Her heart sank. What's wrong? Money missing from the executive safe. And this was found in your cart. They held up an envelope. Inside thick stack of cash. That's not mine, she whispered. I swear. They marched her upstairs again. The hallway was lined with people watching, whispering. She finally showed her true colors. I knew the street girl couldn't be trusted. In Ethan's office, the cash lay on the desk like evidence. Ethan stood behind it, expression blank. Did you steal this? Tears gathered in Nia's eyes. No, sir. Someone put it there. Please. Silence pressed down. Everyone waited for the verdict. Ethan spoke quietly, hesitated, checked the cameras, then nodded and left the room. Minutes crawled by. When he returned, he carried a laptop. The footage played. Nia pushing her cart. Entering an office. Leaving. Then the man in the gray suit walking past. Glancing around. Slipping the envelope inside when no one was looking. The room went deathly still. The man in gray's face drained of color. That's been edited. Play the second angle, Ethan said. Another camera. Clear shot. His hand. The envelope. No ambiguity. Staff began murmuring. He set her up? Why would he do that? Ethan's voice cut through like a blade. Because he's been stealing from the company for months. He needed a scapegoat. You were perfect, new, poor. No one to defend you. The man shouted denials. Ethan didn't raise his voice. Security. They took him away in handcuffs. He twisted at the door, glaring at Nia. This isn't over. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Nia waited until the room emptied. Then she broke. Not loud sobs, just quiet, shaking tears. I'm so tired, she whispered. Why does this keep happening to me? Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Because you didn't break. Most people would have run after the first threat. You stayed. That night her phone buzzed in the quiet apartment. Unknown number. If you want the truth about your parents' accident, meet me tomorrow night. Alone. They didn't just die. They were silenced. Nia stared at the screen until the words blurred. She showed Ethan the next morning. His face went hard. It's a trap. But what if it's real? What if someone finally tells me what happened to them? Silence stretched. Finally he said, You won't go alone. But they can't know I'm there. The warehouse was on the edge of the city. Dark, empty, smelling of rust and old oil. Nia walked inside alone. Heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. A single bulb swung overhead. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Her uncle, older, thinner, she breathed. Eyes You shouldn't have come. You said my parents were silenced. Tell me. He ran a trembling hand over his face. Your father was an accountant. He found fraud, big fraud, tied to people with real power. He was going to turn over evidence. That night, the brakes were tampered with. It wasn't an accident. Tears poured down Nia's face. Why didn't you tell me? They threatened you too. Said if I spoke, you'd disappear next. Who are they? Before he could answer, another voice cut through the dark. You should have stayed quiet, old man. A tall figure stepped into the light. One of Ethan's most trusted board members. The pieces slammed together. The missing money, the internal breach, the threats, her parents' car. The same people. The same playbook. Headlights flooded the warehouse. Ethan walked in, calm and lethal. Your game ends tonight. Police followed. The board member tried to run. There was nowhere to go. He was cuffed and led away, snarling over his shoulder. You should have taken the money and stayed poor. Nia stood rooted. No. I chose honesty. Days later the truth broke wide open. Investigations confirmed everything. Her parents' deaths were reclassified as homicide. The corrupt network inside Harrington Global collapsed. Funds were traced and recovered. Nia's name was cleared in every whisper that had ever accused her. Ethan addressed the entire staff in the main atrium. This company was built on integrity. It will stand on integrity. One young woman reminded us what that word actually means. Some clapped. Some looked at the floor in shame. No one whispered anymore. That evening, Ethan handed Nia a slim envelope. Inside, full scholarship offer and a formal position in the company's executive training program. "You deserve more than survival," he said quietly. Stepped onto the executive balcony that overlooked the boulevard. Below her was the same curb where the wallet had fallen. The same stretch of sidewalk where she had once stood invisible, hungry, hopeless. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Not from pain, but from something softer. She whispered to the night, "Thank you, Grandma. I kept my crown." Behind her, Ethan watched in silence. The billionaire who once measured everything in numbers and control had just witnessed what real power looked like, and it wore a faded red scarf and refused to bend. From a cardboard bed behind a laundromat to a future she could finally build with her own hands. Drop a heart if this story moved you. Nia rose from unseen to unforgettable. Ethan went from distant to protector. A 19-year-old black girl chose honesty over easy money and changed the course of 2 lives forever. What was your favorite moment? The wallet return, the camera reveal, the warehouse truth, or the quiet balcony ending? Tell me in the comments. Have you ever made the hard right choice when the easy wrong looked so much safer? Share your story below. I read everyone. If this reminded you that one honest heart can still shake empires, smash that like button and subscribe to Black Girl Stories. New tales of grit, courage, and black queens proving that character outlasts everything else. Drop every week. Turn on notifications so you never miss one. Sometimes the smallest crown shines the brightest.